Hey you guys, I was going to add some Bible verses to one of my videos, and I just thought, well, I'll just read some of them to you. And I also want to apologize for that hand analogy of my deadbolt. That as I was doing that, I thought this is a little bit offensive looking, but I'm like, they know what I mean, that I don't mean it like that. So but still, I was in a hurry, and I didn't try to do the example a different way. I should have tried to do it a different way. Okay, so anyway, I was thinking about how it's wrong how Candace, and I don't know much about Tucker, what he says, but I think they're a little different. And then now Megyn Kelly, and then there's Ben Shapiro, which I've seen maybe a couple times, but that channel, not TV, but the channel Jew TV, he showed a clip of Ben Shapiro explaining something about how Megyn Kelly launders what others are saying, kind of like, so she's not the bad guy, she's just repeating or something like that. So I want to remind you guys of some Bible verses. First of all, the one in Ephesians. If it's not edifying somebody, then don't say it. The old saying, your mother would tell you, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. And they probably get that straight out of the Bible. But I'm going to go backwards, because I started thinking of other things pertaining, and there's a lot of proverbs about this kind of behavior too. He who hardens his neck when he's often reproved will be destroyed suddenly, and that without remedy, or something like that. And because they are, participating in an evil act, and that is gossip and slander, and they're going to be destroyed suddenly without remedy, because they're hardening their neck from the Bible, from the Word of God, that tells you he's rebuking you not to do it through his Word. So Proverb 18:8, which states, the word of a gossip or whisperer are like choice morsels. They go down to a man's innermost parts. It means gossip is addictive and sinks deep into the heart and mind. Okay, now we know there's kind of pretty much a fine line between gossip, backbiting, slander, and calling out sin. So, but I found a verse for that, and okay, so anyway, yeah, because we're supposed to expose the evil deeds of darkness, but there's a protocol on stuff like that too. Like, Candace should be going to Erica and not blaring it all over the place. Okay, so Proverb 26:20 mentions that without a gossip, fighting and quarrels stop. So you're supposed to, the Bible tells you many descriptions of people that, and their behavior, that you need to walk away from, you need to turn away, you need to not associate with them. Okay, so this is one of them. It's saying get rid of them, or do not associate with them. Okay, Proverb 20:19 advises avoiding those who gossip as they reveal secrets. I heard one preacher say something like, if somebody starts to kind of gossip like that, just say, oh, maybe I'll go tell them this, or something like that. In other words, if the person that's saying something about somebody else to somebody else, if you don't want the person you're talking about to know it, then that's a red flag. That's a red flag. So if the person you're telling it to happens to say, oh, I'm going to go tell them that that's what you said, and if you're afraid, oops, what if they tell them? then that's a red flag that you're probably gossiping. If you can't say it to their face, which, like I've said before, you need to look up the definitions just to do it. You may think you know what they mean, but just go ahead and look up the definition of backbiter. Look up the definition of gossip. Look up the definition of slander, because those are important to know the details so that you don't accidentally do it. Because, like I said, it's a fine line between, like, say, maybe some of these people can't call those other people up and say, hey, look, let's talk this out. I'm offended about this and this, and I think you're... And so if they don't know the person, to call them and so that they're saying it out on their channel, that might be okay if given the chance to say it to that person's face, calling them out, they would. Like Ben Shapiro. I'm sure he would be more than happy to say it to their face. But he's not going to call them up every day and say, hey, look, I want to say this, and this is what you're doing, and you're doing this, and... But see, that's exactly what it is. It's like Ben Shapiro would definitely say it to their faces. So if it's something you're calling out, and you would, if you could, say it to their face, then that is not backbiting or gossip or slander. Okay, 1 Peter 2:1 instructs believers to rid themselves of all slander and gossip. Whisperer, a common term used. Okay, someone who spreads gossip. Okay, so now, and then I took screenshots of some others, and then I was starting to think of other ones, but then I think they popped out of my head, but maybe they'll come back. Okay, Proverb 18:8. The words of a gossip. Okay, so yeah, I took a picture of that. Are like choice morsels. They go down to immense. Often interpreted as gossip being like a tasty bits of food or cheap candy that people enjoy swallowing, even though it is harmful. And then I cut it off. Okay, 2 Timothy 3:16 and 17. Scripture is God-breathed and useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. So this is if you are calling it out, like Ezekiel 3 or Ezekiel 33, where you're seeing a Christian brethren who is backslidden or lukewarm, and you got to go disciple them. You have to say, look, you call yourself a Christian, but because disciple means teach them to obey. And that sounds, oh, that's so offensive. But it's not. It's out of love. And it's not being nosy. It's not being, you're obeying the Bible by doing that. It's like what these other channels do when they're calling out evil. They're basically saying, you better stop it. You better obey and stop doing the crap. So this is saying rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. That is discipling. Okay, then this is probably backwards. Let me see. The north wind driveth away rain, so doth an angry countenance a backbiting tongue. That is... I don't know what Bible verse that is. That's a proverb. I didn't get the... Oh, it's probably... I don't know. Okay, so that I think is a proverb. As surely as a north wind brings rain, so a gossiping tongue causes anger. I didn't get the picture of the... Okay, sorry. Romans 12:9 commands, quote, abhor what is evil, hold fast to what is good. These verses indicate a duty to stand against wrongdoing wrongdoing rather than remaining silent or complicit. Ezekiel 3:18 suggests a responsibility to speak out, stating that if a wicked person is not warned to change their ways, the person who stayed silent may be held accountable. Psalm 94:16 asks, who will rise up for me against the evildoers? You have to stand up for your brethren. If you see somebody getting disparaged or something, you have to, like the example, oh, should I go tell them that? You know, don't have respect. Don't have so much respect for the person who is privately gossiping to you about somebody else that you're too afraid of them and what they're going to think of you, because you fear only God. Don't fear man. Don't fear that, oh, they're not going to like me anymore if I call them out on what they're doing. Who cares? Who cares, okay? You do not need to be acting like that. Afraid of your, oh, they won't like me anymore. Who cares? Who do you want to please? That guy, that woman, or God? So you have to call that out. It's called discipling. Do it in your own way. Figure it out. Figure out how to say it. And tell them to stop it. Or their blood is going to be on your hands. Who will rise up for me against the evildoers? Or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity? And I hope it would be, you. For your friend. Stand up for your friend. King David is like, who's going to stand up for me against everyone doing this to me? You got to stand up for your friends. Proverbs 24, and 5. Whoever says to the wicked, quote, you're in the right, will be cursed by the people, but those who rebuke the wicked will have delight. People will like that person. No, there's another proverb about the same thing. And it's like, if you let somebody get away with it, maybe everybody will. And then everybody's going to be oppressed. If you stand up to it, everyone's going to love you for it. They're going to say, wow, he said exactly what I wanted to say, but I didn't. Okay. Ephesians 5:11, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. Isaiah 5:20 warns, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, emphasizing the need to correctly identify and condemn wickedness. Ezekiel 3:18 suggests a responsibility to speak out, stating that if a wicked person is not warned to change their ways, the person who stayed silent may be held accountable. Colossians 4:6, let your conversation, this is to people like Candace, let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. That's not the main one. I asked Google, I said, what verses are like Ephesians 4? What other verses are like Ephesians 5 verse 4, which says, wait a minute, where is it? Hold on. And my phone turned sideways. Don't speak unless it is to the edification of the hearer. Nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. Oh, darn. I'll just look it up. So, in other words, 4:29. Ephesians 4:29, King James.
Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29 in the King James Version says to avoid harmful words and instead use speech that is good and helpful, which builds others up and shows kindness. It emphasizes using language to encourage others.
Yeah, avoid corrupt communication, this course. In other words, to the edification of the hearer, that it may minister grace unto the hearer. If it's not ministering grace or edifying the hearer, then keep your mouth shut, like your mother told you. She's like, if you don't have anything nice to say. So I asked her, are there any other verses like this? Because I couldn't think of any off the top of my head. And then she has Ephesians 5:4, nor should there be obscenity, foolish talk, or coarse joking, which are out of place, but rather thanksgiving. Matthew 12:34, for the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Yeah, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if somebody's speaking a bunch of, we all can see what kind of heart Candace and Tucker have. It's black as the night of darkness. Okay. As Psalm 141:3, set a guard, O Lord, over my mouth. Keep watch over the door of my lips. I did that twice. Romans 15:2, each of us should please our neighbors for their good, to build them up. James 3:10, out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be so. Colossians 3:8, but now you must also rid yourselves of all such things as these: anger, rage, malice, slander, and filthy language from your lips. Filthy language, I think that's like vulgar joking. I don't think it's so much as when you are describing vulgar behavior, as in Candace or Tucker, and you got to use a cuss word because that's the only disgusting, vile word good enough to describe that behavior. I don't know. So Ecclesiastes 10:12, words from the mouth of the wise are gracious, but fools are consumed by their own lips. And see, these people should know these verses, but they're just ignoring the Bible. They're ignoring what God has said, and they're just letting her rip because they feel justified, like they're doing the world a favor by exposing a widow or exposing whatever they're trying to think that they think they should expose, and they're doing it, what is it, false pretenses. They're under the guise of, I'm doing you a favor, I'm educating you, but really it's just gossip. 1 Thessalonians 5:11, therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing. Romans 14:19, let us therefore make every effort to do what leads to peace and to mutual edification. Some of these may not be exactly what we're looking for, but Colossians 4:6, let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how to answer everyone. Now, this isn't always possible when you are exposing deeds of darkness, but as a rule of life, that is how you're supposed to be living your life. Colossians 4:6 and Ephesians 4, whatever it said. Should be your rule, how you're living your life. But when you're calling out evil, that's just a different, that's not what they're talking about here. Here is just what they're saying is your way of life. When you start calling out evil, that's a different story. They're not talking about that. So Proverbs 15:2, the tongue of the wise commends knowledge, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly. Proverbs 25:11, like apples of gold in settings of silver is a ruling rightly given. Like when someone might praise you or thank you, instead of not acknowledging you, maybe, like they don't acknowledge anything Trump has done. But if they acknowledge those things, it's like apples of gold. Like today we're thinking, who wants apples of gold? Settings and silver. But hey, you can look up commentary on that. I'm sure it's something very nice. Maybe it's an award. I don't know. Ephesians 5:11, have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather expose them. Okay, I went backwards and I read you guys these, so I can't remember the other verses. So when you are remembering these verses to live by, and then sometimes you may think, oh, but God, what about this scenario? Like I was just giving you one, like when you're calling something out. Then it helps when you remember another verse. Oh, okay, well, that's what you do with that. And then as you're remembering, then you might say, okay, but yeah, God, but I remember that verse about that instance where so because it can branch out into different examples, because, you know, this is what happens this is how legalism comes about, is that somebody's reading their Bible and they're like, whoops, I can only say nice things. And then when an oppressor comes along, they think they are supposed to just only say nice things, and oh, whoa, I gotta endure this. And no, you have to know the verses, and you have to talk to Jesus about it. First of all, cast your care, and then you have to know other verses, and then you say, yeah, Jesus, I need to expose them, what they're doing to me. Tell them to their face, you're wrong, you shouldn't be treating me this way, something. And that way, this is another reason why shitty things in your life happen, so that you can know the Bible. And now you've learned, like, I used to never understand Proverbs until that stuff started happening to me in my life. So now I could get it. I understood the Proverbs, some of them. So if bad things don't happen in your life, then you won't understand what the Bible is talking about. And you may read it once and it never happened to you. So, nobody slandered you and caused everybody to hate you, for example. So you don't know how to handle that. But if it happened to you, yeah, it's an unrighteous, unjust thing. But if bad things happen to you, then you can go. And most of the bad things are to teach you how to trust Jesus, that he knows it's not a shock to him. He knows exactly what's going on. And it means you have to just buck up under the sorrow and say, God knows this. Jesus knows this. He already knows it's going on. And he's going to help me. Like Suzanne Guthrie and Erica Kirk. Their sorrow, it's sorrow. And they have to remind themselves, God knows this. God knows this. He knows what's going on. It hurts very badly, but he has something he's doing. With me, he has... Now, I hate to use that as an example because I haven't suffered with that before. So I shouldn't be really counseling about, giving my counsel about... But suppose it's, God forbid, a horrible test like that. Or losing your wife or losing your child. That's a horrible test. And it is, but you have to remind yourself, Job was tested like that, and God himself gave up his son. And Abraham, he was going to obey God to where he was going to kill his son, but he spoke to himself to console himself. And he said, but God can bring him back to life. Something like that. And God did. But that doesn't always happen. I understand. But you can kind of console yourself with that. And also pray to Jesus. Say, this really hurts. I pray for the widows and the orphans and the Jews. When I'm, the verse, peace, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Well, there's going to be no peace in Jerusalem. So what are you talking about, God? It's first of all, I heard somebody say it means you're asking God to come back and deliver Israel out of all her problems. It's asking Jesus to come back, really, basically. But what I do is I say, Lord, I pray for their peace in this trial. And with, like, say, Job, where was I going with that? Okay, so like us, yeah, like the widows and the orphans, I ask Jesus to give them a peace and a joy that is above their sorrow, because you can have sorrow that is unconsolable, like there's in Isaiah. He says, "O thou tossed and afflicted and cannot be comforted, I will lay your foundations with beautiful stones." I loved that verse. I loved it. It goes on quite a bit. It's so beautiful because, "O thou afflicted and tossed with tempest and not comforted." Nothing can comfort you. God says, behold, you who cannot be consoled and comforted, I'm going to lay your foundations with beautiful and precious stones. And I just pray for people like that, that they cannot be comforted. They're inconsolable. They'll always be devastated. Well, there is a miracle where you can feel peace, joy, comfort in a monotone level, I don't know how to describe it, but it's not like some bubbling over joy and peace necessarily, but it's like an underlying joy and peace in the sorrow. And that's what I pray for the orphans and widows. And Highways and Hedges, if you Google Highways and Hedges, it's like the malign type people in the society. You know, Jesus is always about the underdog. So and so yes, you can have peace. Job didn't seem to have peace for a month or a week. And we may not always get the end of Job, all the blessings, but we can have the peace. We can have the peace in the sorrow, the joy in the sorrow. So okay, hopefully you know what I mean. And all right, God bless you guys. And it's very sad what Christians are doing to other Christians, like Candace and them. So just you gotta expose evil, and you have to also call her out and tell her she needs to stop that if you're friends with her. And then I think there was a verse it had come, and I forgot it, but I think there's somewhere like when you're participating in that, people who are watching her, they're guilty as well. When you are listening to it and participating in it, you're also a partaker. But if you're doing it so that you can rebuttal and rebuke it, that's different. That's different. If you're listening to it for entertainment or gossip, that's wrong. Okay, bye. God bless you. Bye.